Christopher Massicotte. Chris, come on up.
First of all, I just want to thank you all for coming today. My name is Chris Massicotte. I'm from Lunenburg, Massachusetts. I'm a sophomore accounting major. And first question I have actually concern is on entitlements, and such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I'm not sure if Lyndon Johnson knew what he was doing when he signed Medicare into law back in 66 or 67, I'm not sure when it was. But it's grown out of hand. But, and also, I don't know if FDR knew what he was doing when he signed in Social Security into law, and that has also grown out of hand. But what some people forget maybe is what Social Security and Medicare are, or something called automatic stabilizers in the economy, like when the unemployment goes up, unemployment insurance comes out, and that comes out of Social Security, I believe, right? And I don't think we can really fool around with too much with Social Security and Medicare, because if we do, then we'll actually have a larger impact on the economy than what most people think that will happen. Another thing is, I mentioned earlier, people said that they didn't feel as if defense should be cut. I always I saw a bumper sticker the other day that said, the national government spends $300 billion a year on defense, but who's attacking? I believe that defense should be cut. I read an article last week about Bill Clinton in Japan, talking to Japan about them defending themselves, because it's in their constitution that America defends Japan. I believe that Japan should defend itself. I don't think we should have to. It was right at the time after World War II that we should defend Japan, but I think they've grown into their own and that they don't have to. Because if a war was to break out in Korea, since there is conflict there, it would be American soldiers that would die in Korea, and it would be Japan's government, debating over how much money they should cough up for it. And I don't think that's right, because we are actually defending Japan's land. So I believe that defense should be cut, and that the money that we receive from the defense cuts should go to such entitlements as Medicare and Social Security. Thanks.
Okay, questions for Christopher? Mr. Colby.
Well, just one very quickly on the national defense issue. When I happen to agree with you, there's waste in defense, and there certainly are areas that could be cut. In fact, John Kasich and I have been leaders in a fight to try to cut a couple of the very large procurement programs in defense that we thought were unnecessary. But I would urge you to look at this issue very carefully, and not from the standpoint of how much money do we want to spend on defense, and then now we'll design a defense program to go with it. You said we're not under attack at any place in the world today, but I would suggest it's the end of the Cold War has actually, ironically, led to in some ways, a much more unstable world out there, and that the U.S. role still remains a very paramount role. We are the only country that has the political, the diplomatic, the military, the economic, and I would say the moral power to be a superpower. And just specifically on the issue of Japan, for example, when President Clinton talked about that, and he talked about our commitment to defense, he was standing on the deck of a 40-year-old aircraft carrier. There's well over 10 years past the time of its life expectancy, and still being held together with baling wire and chewing gum. If we change the Japanese constitution, or if they change it to provide for more defense for themselves, that is conversely going to cause a great deal of anxiety in Korea, China, and other places, and there will be a very large, massive buildup in Asia. That is not in our interests. And so I would say that you need to put all of these in the context of the global situation and the regional situation. When you think about it, it's easy to say, let Japan defend itself. But in the end, we might find ourselves bearing a very large cost of trying to separate the powers over there if Japan suddenly was to rearm itself. It's a very delicate situation in Japan. But I appreciate the comment, a very delicate issue in the Far East. I appreciate the comment, and I commend you for the thoughts that you've given us today, and just wanted to point out sometimes these things are complex.
Thank you, Jim.
Issues.
Let me just ask you, Chris, first of all, I'd like to know, how many people in here know that Medicare is going to be bankrupt within the next 7 years? How many of you believe that you will ever receive Medicare benefits? Raise your hand. How many of you do not believe you will ever get Medicare benefits? Okay, now let me ask you a question, Chris. We have a $5 trillion national debt, and it's moving somewhere. The real debt is somewhere between 10 and 12 trillion, because you're all going to have to work and your children have to work to pay for our benefits, and we really appreciate that. Chris, you said that if you save money in defense, you would put it into entitlements. How would you think that we're going to, which would mean you'd spend more, right?
Exactly.
How would you think that that's going to get us to a balanced budget and solve this problem of these big debts?
I'm not sure a balanced budget is in the best interest right now for us. I mean, I know that the people in Congress want to balance it in 7 years, and in 7 years we'll be working hard and we won't be getting the benefits that you did. Not that I want to pass the buck off to my children, but I don't believe that 7 years is long enough for us to bring the government to a balanced budget. I would agree with more with like 20 to 25 years to bring it to a balanced budget. And that way that we can learn to spend less, to live on less, and that our government isn't supposed to be out there just to provide for
One
us.
just last question. Do you think that the level of government spending is going to determine what your life is going to be like?
Personally, no, but for others out there, yes.
Well, if you'll yield, the time frame that you've just referred to, in order to get the revenue to support the government at that kind of level for that long, the prediction is that we would have to have an 87% tax rate by the year 2020. That's in the 25 years that you're talking about. Are you prepared to pay an 87% tax rate on the income that you earn?
I'm not prepared for 87% tax rate, but I do believe that the taxes in this country are way too low. In Sweden, in countries like Sweden and Finland, they pay tax rates of up to 60%. We have the lowest tax rate of all the G7 countries in the world, and we don't, the United States does not provide for us. In Sweden, their university costs are paid for, all their high schooling costs are paid for. Every person in Sweden or Germany or France has the same opportunity when they come out of high school as every other student, not because of income.
Yeah, and their economies are collapsing.
Not Sweden's.
Sure it is. It is collapsing.
Okay.
The European economies are collapsing.
Mr. Hoke has a question.
Thanks, John. Mr. Casey. James Otis said in 1765, as one of the rallying cries of the American Revolution, taxation without representation is tyranny. And I go to high schools a lot. Now, I realize that probably, how many people here, how many of you students have already, not just the students, how many of you have already voted in at least one federal election? Okay, well then, so a lot of you have actually voted for the first time. Chris, you have not.
No, I have.
Oh, you have. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. But when I talk to high school students about this, they really get it. I would imagine that you get it, but in fact, what we have done is something that I think is tremendously immoral. And I really think that the most potent argument, the most compelling argument is the moral argument with respect to the way that we've run our federal budget. And that is that we have taxed an entire generation, plus probably another generation, and stolen from them without their consent. That is exactly what a $5 trillion debt is. And I think that, you know, regardless of how you feel about what government programs ought to be and ought not to be, and all those arguments, that the fact is that it is simply wrong. It's absolutely wrong for us, and now for you as a voter, to be stealing from our children. That it's just not right. And I'll tell you what happens, that like with many, many things in life, when you start to do the wrong thing, you get terrible results, and all of these results compound on top of themselves. But when you do the right thing, and the right thing in this case is not to steal money from our children and not to spend money that we don't have. And when you say that you can see waiting another 20 or 25 years before we balance the budget, that means every single year we are borrowing from the next generation that we do that. But what we don't do, or what happens as a result of that bad thing in the first place, is that we get worse government. Because instead of getting the kind of sharp, thoughtful, focused decisions and debate that happen when you've got to have when it's got to come into balance, when you can't spend more than you have, when you have to pay for what we do on a pay-as-you-go basis, we get much worse results because we just write checks against an account that never bounces.
I'm going to start exercising the dictatorial rights of a chairman, and we are going to start, no more professorals from up here, okay? We've covered 4 people, and you're done. Thank you, Chris. You did a great job. We are going to go